Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Jason Banicki Experience podcast. As always, I am your host, Jason Banicki. Please add me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at JASONBANICKI. Add the Facebook page for the podcast, the Jason Banicki Experience podcast. Add the Instagram page, Jason Banicki Experience. And as always, please subscribe, rate, review on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Amazon, Satchel Podcast Player, CastBox, and iHeartRadio. Appreciate everybody. The numbers are doing real good again. I always like to throw that out there when I start an episode, just to give you guys some love for showing me some love. Appreciate when people tune in. This week, though, I'm going to talk more sports than I have recently. This is being recorded Tuesday night at about 7:30, so we're just barely a day after the end of the NCAA tournament, and I feel like I'm going to take on one of my favorite topics to take on, one of my favorite arguments I always get into, and that's to tackle whether or not NCAA student athletes deserve to be paid above and beyond their scholarship. You always hear a lot of arguments for why they should or why they shouldn't. I fall into the pro category. I absolutely do believe that Division I athletes deserve some sort of compensation above and beyond their tuition and their free books and their stuff to compensate them for the time they put in working for the university. And I found a really good Why We Shouldn't Pay College Athletes article on Bleacher Report from a couple years back. And I'm going to kind of use that as a jumping off point for where I think that the anti-argument is so off base. But again, I think anybody who works as hard as Division I athletes do, who put in the time in the weight room, in the gym, on the field, studying their playbooks, et cetera, who only can do 20 hours worth of practice per week, but do way more beyond that sports-related activities, deserve to be compensated above and beyond just their scholarship and their cost of tuition, their housing, et cetera, et cetera. So, at some point you have to bring into the fact that, the NCAA is bringing in over $1 billion annually at this point. They're making a ton of money, and they're using, obviously, men's basketball, college football, and even to an extent now women's basketball that generates some revenue to subsidize the rest of the sports, with which Title IX restrictions and other things is part and parcel of the deal. You're going to have to, at some point, have some sports subsidize others, but to what level that should occur is something that needs to change. And again, I'm not saying that we need a free market capitalism system for these athletes or anything like that, but simply find a way to compensate them above and beyond that says, look, we know you're not going to be able to work while you're in season or off season or any other time of the year other than something that just creates a clear NCAA violation. So what we're going to do is go ahead and offer you a little bit more so you have some pocket change. For me, I think the simple number is something like $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year. Not an exceptional amount. Again, the numbers are debatable. If you want to say $1,000 a month, I wouldn't argue that $1,000 a month in pocket money isn't a lot. If somebody wanted to say $600 a month, again, the numbers we can debate afterwards. But I think we all have to get on board that it's time to say that the people who generate $1 billion in annual revenue for the NCAA deserve a bigger cut of that pie than they're currently getting. So I'm going to kind of dig into this article that says why we shouldn't pay them. It says current college athletes are already being paid with an athletic scholarship that is worth between $20,000 and $50,000 per year. I'm tired of this old, tired, haggard argument. Again, yes, they do get a college scholarship. They do get the opportunity to graduate, debt-free with a degree that they could use and earn more money throughout their lifetime. However, the reality is that, there's a significant number of college athletes who never graduate, who aren't there to graduate, and will not be able to take advantage of that full scholarship, or who get cut by universities before their scholarship is up. Because after all, the university needs that scholarship for somebody else now to play sports. Because after all, it's not an academic scholarship. It is clearly an athletic scholarship where they're being subsidized for the athletic performance. And if they fail to meet the standards athletically or break team rules even, they can lose their scholarship and not be able to complete it. So it's not like it's a full 4-year scholarship. It's a year-by-year deal. And to act like this then should be the end-all, be-all, I just disagree. I think there needs to be an until graduation scholarship. So that way, A, the university has incentive to make the kids graduate on time or in a timely manner so somebody can't drag it out forever. And 2, takes away the ability of the university to yank a scholarship from one kid to use it from another. And then you get this, and that does not even begin to factor in the medical and travel expenses, free gear, top-notch coaching, unlimited use of elite athletic facilities, and a national stage to audition for a job in the professional ranks. Again, yeah, they do get medical and travel expenses paid for while they're in college, but they can't be paid to travel anywhere but to and from games or university events. So, say they have a funeral at home to attend, the university can't pay to send them home. We've seen players get in trouble for that before, for getting flights home to funerals of their mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. That's how ridiculous the NCAA is on their amateurism rules that they created. They said they had to be amateurs, and then they broke the amateurism rules. Like, we are not watching amateur athletes. Amateur athletes, to me, are people who do something for the love of the game, who play purely for fun, who even enjoy the competition and want to win. But once we start throwing in a system where over $1 billion is generated in revenue by the sports played, they're no longer amateur sports. When the coach is making $5, $6, $7, $8, $10 million a year, it's not an amateur sport anymore. Amateur sports would involve amateurism by all participants involved, and the coaches and officials and the universities and the athletic directors are all too well compensated for this to be considered amateur sports anymore. They do get free gear. However, they get free gear because the university is making money from the provider of that gear in exchange for the athletes wearing it on the field to then promote that gear and create an advertising situation for Nike or Adidas or Reebok or whoever gear they're wearing. So it's not free other than the student didn't pay for it. But as a matter of fact, the university is making money off that kid wearing that gear, which, again, kid can't wear. Top-notch coaching. Again, yeah, they do get top-notch coaching, but that coach is excellently compensated by money made through the labor of that individual. Unlimited use of elite athletic facilities. Those elite athletic facilities weren't just created in a vacuum. They weren't there before major college sports. They were there as a result of college sports and the money generated and the revenue generated and the interest. So if it's a facility paid for by a booster, congratulations. But they weren't going to pay for it if there was just intramural athletics happening on that campus. It wasn't just put there because, they thought we need a top-notch training situation. Nope. They put it there because they want to see their college basketball team win more games, and they know they can recruit better athletes and better performers if they have better facilities. And again, they want to see this. They want to get a return on their investment, which again, the athlete cannot. And a national audit stage to audition for a job in the professional ranks. True. They do absolutely 100% get this. However, baseball finds many kids in high school without ever, and gives them millions of dollars a year without ever having to have them play college sports, without them having to audition in a national rank. So yes, does this improve their chances? Possibly, but it also creates a risk where 2, 3, 4 years they are risking their health and their chance to make that paycheck, where they're stuck because both the NCAA and the NFL, NBA, etc. are complicit in this amateurism scheme / turning college into a free minor league system instead of saying, okay, the best of the best will pay right away out of high school. You can come play in a minor leagues for a few years while you develop. Once we think you're ready, then you can step up to the big leagues. It's one of the things where baseball at least has it right, where at least college baseball, which again is part of why it's not as popular, because it has to compete against the MLB for the best talent, has this problem with developing more interest and more following and more revenue because it's not a true minor league. It's just another place to watch closer to amateur baseball because those guys at least had an opportunity to turn down some money. And then this guy goes into, before attempting to discredit some of the cases for compensating players Let's take into account all the things they already receive cost-free. Athletic scholarships cover just about everything a student-athlete needs to survive for 4 years at a major university. Campus housing, daily medical care, and free meals via training table are all included. Tuitions and books are covered as well. Well, that's true. All of these things are included, and that's great. But guess who else gets that? Any teaching assistant for a graduate student also gets every one of those things for free. And you know what else they get on top of their tuition, their medical care, their meals that are included, tuition and books, etc., etc.? They get a financial stipend to help them live off of while they're in graduate school. They're being compensated for the time that they are expected to help, either help teach classes or actually teach classes at the university. And this is why they're given a stipend. Well, guess what? If you want the best, graduate students, this is what you do. In college sports and college football and college basketball, it should be no different. You're getting the best athletes at their age, then you should be compensating them for their 20 hours a week of practice, their time in the weight room, et cetera, et cetera. Again, most graduate fellowships pay a stipend of as little as $10,000, some as many as $30,000 a year, and I don't see any reason why those numbers are, heartbreaking for college athletics. Might be a few less lacrosse teams and a few less field hockey teams, but then those could go back to being true amateur sports played by people who are doing it already at the university, doing it for the love of the game. That would be true amateurism, where coaches are volunteer, where the players are, aren't compensated in any way, shape, or form, and they're just playing for the love of the sport. Coaches are coaching for the love of the sport, and they're playing for the love of the sport, as opposed to the current situation where you have a Rutgers in the Big East where they could have to fly from New York City to Nebraska for a basketball game on a Wednesday afternoon or a Wednesday evening basketball game. Yeah, really worried about them being student athletes then. And they're talking about, he goes into leaving without a degree regardless. Then he talks about getting to travel around the world is a privilege, another privilege these student athletes are afforded. They get to go to Maui, they get to go to Ireland, they can go to, Puerto Rico or any Bahamas or any of these places where, these basketball players get to go. And it's just like, well, this is places that only most of the readers here could dream of going. And I think that really gets to the crux of what happens with a lot of this discussion, is it gets to be jealousy. Again, these guys aren't just going to Puerto Rico to go to Puerto Rico, or they're not going to Ireland to just go hang out in Ireland. They're going there for an athletic competition. They're going there because their skill set took them there. They're not going there because the university said, hey, here's 75 guys we'd love to fly to Ireland. You won the magic drawing. You get to go to Ireland. Have fun. And that's what so many of these articles are coaxed in. They're just coaxed in this. I don't want to say coaxed. God dang it. They're coached or put out in this, see what they get to do. You don't get to do that mentality. Guess what? Guess what many people who earn more money than me get to do? A lot of things I don't get to do. And he even admits, well, I've racked up over $80,000 in tuition fees over the past 4 years in college, and I work at Athletic to pay off my debts, at least pay theirs off by going to practice and performing in games. True, but again, as I pointed out, graduate assistants or teaching fellows or any of these positions that a lot of graduate students are eligible for get everything on top of their benefits and tuition and everything else. For anybody interested, this guy's name is Zach Dirlam, Zachdirlam. This was a Bleacher Report article. Not sure that he works for Bleacher Report anymore. This is from a few years back, and I'm just going to point this out. This is clearly just the envy that is part and parcel of this we shouldn't pay student athletes argument, and it has to stop. This is the same thing that pulls over into government talking about, why we didn't need to give the rich bigger tax cuts, and why CEOs earn their pay, and why burger guys who work at McDonald's and flip burgers for a living are only worth $7.25 an hour. Like, I get tired of all these broken arguments that say, well, see, they earn it and they don't. So sorry, those are just the rules. And then he tries to tear down the fair market value argument. Well, these guys aren't being paid for their fair market value because if they're a college basketball player, they can't go to the NBA till 1 year, and the NFL for 3 years after graduating high school. Guess what? This is something that behind closed doors, I guarantee you, the NCAA and NFL both work to support, and the NCAA and the NBA both work to support, because it's a mutually beneficial arrangement to have this free minor league system for the professional sports and to give free labor for the NCAA. So I don't care whether you want to say, well, these guys can't quite go straight from high school to their professional sport, so they're not really worth anything, blah, blah, blah. They can't earn this money any other way, but they have to go to college, it's et cetera, et cetera. Well, yeah, technically, yes. The rules of the game are very much set up in a antitrust matter, and they're being maintained by the status quo because a lot of millionaires and billionaires, don't want to have to work a little harder to justify their thing. And then I'm just skipping over because he kind of rehems. He goes into the, most athletic departments aren't profitable. Well, that's because they're paying coaches too much. And again, because the sports generating revenue are expected to subsidize other sports. That's just the reality of the situation. And and we've all heard these similar arguments. Well, these guys should consider themselves lucky, and they should be taking full fair advantage of the opportunities of being in college, and they should be enjoying being students. Blah, 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 blah. All this bullshit that people talk out their anus just because they're mad they were never that good, that they weren't good enough to be student athletes, that they couldn't get that free scholarship. So then they hate on these individuals and say, like, look, see, you don't deserve that. I couldn't do that, so why should you? Well, then why is it okay for grad students, to get their fellowship, to get their tuition paid for, their travel for their thesis and research and et cetera paid for by the university, and get a stipend on top of that? Because the university benefits from having them teach classes, and it saves them money by paying their tuition, their medical care, and a stipend. Guess what? These athletes work for the university. They are not amateurs. They are employees. It is time to change that conversation. And then you get to the arguments like Money Inc. Well, if they're employees, then if they would just get a salary instead of a scholarship, let's say we give them $100,000. Well, then they got to pay $35,000 in taxes. And at most universities, by the time you then pay your tuition, you come out flush even. Well, again, I say to those people, this is not an either-or system. It doesn't have to be either scholarships or pay. There is a perfect example of how to make this work already in the world of academia. Already at every one of these, or at least not, if not everyone, at almost every one of these universities in the that play college sports, that have college sports, use your graduate student model. Give them the free to subsidized healthcare through the university. Give them their tuition for free, and then a small stipend on top of it that then, yes, they'll have to pay taxes on because it's a stipend. That's a payment. That's a salary, etc. Guess what? You are employees. This is how it works. Fair enough. It's not hard. We're not trying to reinvent. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to come up with some new system. It's existed. It's existed for decades in academia. At least I'd have to do research to see how long graduate fellowships and teaching assistantships, etc. go back. I don't know. I've not done the research on it. I just know they exist because I've for years have looked into doing graduate school and seeing them out there and studied them and actually kind of based which universities I want to go to based on strength of what their financial benefits would be. That's the reality to it. I don't understand how anybody can think it's okay for these kids to, at 18 years old, be stuck in a contract more strict than the coaches who are adults that are supposed to be the adults. They're supposed to be their role models and mentors and help develop them into men. Are by contract stuck at the university for 4 to 5 years and have to pay a penalty if they want to change universities or switch that no other student has, that no graduate student would have. If a graduate student decides that the graduate program is not for him, then he can leave. He is stuck where he's at and can transfer to another one and start over again, or start, hope some of the credits transfer, et cetera, et cetera. If a football coach or a basketball coach wants to leave, they could just walk out next year, coach again, make more money usually. Nobody cares. But a student athlete can get cut after a year if his scholarship is deemed not valuable anymore. And then the minute he's done playing college football, even if he has a catastrophic injury, the minute he's done, the health care stops. So you could literally get injured beyond repair. You could alter the rest of your life playing college football. They're like, sorry, you're on your own now. Sucks to suck, buddy. But you were an amateur, and we couldn't offer you some, health care for those who need it for the rest of their lives. Again, it doesn't have to be full, but if you had an injury playing sports, then the university should be expected to maintain that until you're done, until it's completely healed or until you die. I'm sorry. There needs to be some sort of full life benefit as long as hundreds of millions and billions of dollars are being made in college sports. At least the Olympics gave up decades ago that sham of amateurism and let the individuals be paid professional athletes that they already kind of were anyways, because the Olympics was making a ton of money and everybody else was making money off it. But the athletes, whoa, you have to put all that money into a trust and you can't touch it till you retire. Those are the rules. If you touch it, then you're not eligible to be in the Olympics anymore. Sorry guys. Those are the rules. Sorry, girls, gals, whatever. Those are the rules. And that's just really how I feel. Like, if that much money is being made, and it's being made off the back of young athletes, again, you have to pay them. And it doesn't have to be a lot. I'm not saying turn this into a free market with free agency, but update the rules for the 21st century. Follow a model you already have in academia and say, okay, hey, here's your cost of tuition, your medical care, et cetera, and here's a little pocket money for you since you put in so many hours for the university and represent us on that field, and you generate us a ton of revenue, and here you go. If that means a few smaller sports have to die and go back to true amateur athletics status, so be it. Again, if the tennis team isn't generating enough revenue, guess what? Tennis team dies. Though that's okay. And yet the people who argue this the most against it are the ones who you would think tend to be Republican and conservative and all about the free market when they're talking about somebody earning $7.25 an hour and a CEO earning $40,000 an hour. Somehow when it comes to college athletics, man, do they just not care about people being compensated, and they just, they took our jobs. That's all they become, is just these characters of people who just rant and rave like lunatics that just come off as angry, bitter people that they weren't able to do more with, be a better athlete and be in a position to take advantage of their gifts like the student athletes do. Like I said, I don't want to hammer it home too much, but again, I don't think it's hard to say in the 21st century, $1 billion being generated clearly off of their work. You may have went to IU, so you want to see IU do well, but if IU ran out the team they ran out and right after the Kelvin Sampson era, not many people were watching IU basketball. Trust me, they weren't making the money they were now. And if it stayed at that level or worse, people would altogether stop watching and they would stop generating revenue. And the same goes for anybody else. Absolutely is a benefit for the university to having high quality athletics. And again, I'm not saying create a system that absolutely destroys college athletics. But again, it is time to have an altering of that landscape. College football coaches and college basketball coaches shouldn't be the highest paid employees in many states when they're at state-run universities and then try and play the poverty card when it's like, oh, well, see, we can't afford that. It's just bullshit, and I'm tired of it. Let's get past it. Let's find a way to say they do the work, they get paid, just like any other university employee. I'm going to call it that a wrap. This is going to come out Thursday night. I'm moving Friday, so I'm going to be on the road all day. But please hit me back. Give me some other why we should pay athletes. And I completely avoided the race issue with this on purpose. I really wanted to just stay at the fundamentals of deconstructing some of the key arguments as I felt they needed to be deconstructed, and offer my greatest example of how we could compensate them in a way that's already a model in the university world that doesn't go with the either or. Either they're amateurs or they're going to get just a salary. Like, no, the world of academia has this model. But please hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat at JASONBANICKI. Please subscribe, rate, review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Amazon, CastBox, Satchel Podcast Player, iHeartRadio. Share with your friends, share with your mother, share with your brother, share with your father. Keep this bad boy growing. Like the Facebook page, the Jason Banicki Experience Podcast. Like the Instagram page, Jason Banicki Experience. All I can say is let's keep this growing. Let's keep this momentum going. And peace.